Welcome to RotoWire Fantasy Football Live, coming at you 5 days a week, 11 a.m. Eastern. We're off on Wednesdays and Thursdays, but any day we have the show, if you miss it, you can always catch a replay on RotoWire YouTube. Appreciate everybody who takes the time to hang with this show. It means a lot to be part of your fantasy football routine, so thank you for that. Another great week here. We'll have Anthony Cervino coming in. He'll probably come in very, very soon, and usually comes in the middle of the show or quarter way through, and he'll come through early today. He'll have to get out a little early. Look, big week. Week 14, teams playing for their playoff lives, winning in situations for many. Other teams playing for seeding, trying to get a bye. Some people trying to spoil other people's opportunities to get in. All that said, number of week winners. I think we'll save the week winners and the dream crushers for the end of the show after Anthony's out. I think that's the way we'll handle that. And I like that segment of the show now. All right. The Bills finally top the Chiefs. Well, Buffalo now, they're tied with 6 teams for the 6 and 7 seeds. So they wouldn't make the playoffs on tiebreakers right now, and they are out on a lot of tiebreakers. But with a lot of football left, there are teams that are going to get in on record. And the tiebreakers, again, 6 and 7 seeds are 7 and 6. Big win for Buffalo. Well, how does Buffalo do it? Well, it's been the same formula. Now, they haven't won all the games, understand. But offensively, the formula has been with Joe Brady calling the shots. It's really Josh Allen and it's James Cook. They're getting it done. Now, we did have one big game from Gabe Davis, goose-egged again. That's his 3rd or 4th goose egg of the year. I mean, starting Gabe Davis is very, very dangerous. He had 100 yards and a touchdown a couple games ago. But those zeros, oh, man, those are just weak killers. And Stephon Diggs, he hasn't had a 100-yard game since week 6. And his yardage, he had like 70-ish, 74 yards last week. But in most games, he's not even barely hitting 40 yards. So it's James Cook. What has James Cook done differently? They're using him in motion a lot. They're expanding his role as a receiver. The receiving role, he only had 10 carries. But he has been heavily involved as a receiver. But Joe Brady, for whatever reason, understood he's an explosive weapon. Defenses have to worry about Diggs, even though he's not producing. You got to play him as an alpha. You got to still worry about Gabe Davis, even though you know he might get shut out. So James Cook is leveraging this into great opportunity with play calling. So again, 5.8 yards per carry on the ground, 5 catches for 83 and a touchdown. He has over 100 scrimmage yards, 4 games now, all 3 with Brady and 1 before there. So right now, the snap share is not great, 44%, but when he's on the field, he's getting the ball. And that's really all that matters. And so James Cook, and look, we drafted him. He was originally about 75 picks into a draft. By the time draft season was over, he was getting into the low 60s. But we took that draft value as often as we could. And he didn't have some pretty games earlier in the season, but he's really stabilized. And I don't think his role in the offense is going away. Josh Allen, not a great game, 23 of 42, 233 and a touchdown. He runs for 32 and another score. Fantasy, he gets it done. But the Chiefs, look, they haven't been great. Their offense isn't scoring a lot of points. Buffalo scored 20 points and won this game. And that's all they had to do to win in Kansas City. So fortunately, and the Chiefs defense is playing okay. We've talked about it. Welcome in, Anthony Cervino. Just talking about the Bills topping the Chiefs. Was talking about how James Cook 4 weeks in a row has been very good. And in the 3 weeks of Brady, they're getting him in motion. They're using him as a receiver. Diggs hasn't done much since week 6. Another goose egg for Gabe Davis. Josh Allen does enough to get 20 points on the board and get the win. Any thoughts on the Bills?
Yeah, the Bills are playing good football, and I think it started with Ken Dorsey. There was a lot of controversy around Dorsey and how this offense performed post Brian Daboll, and it looks like letting him go was the best thing that happened to Josh Allen and this team. Even the defense that has been dealing with injury after injury, they seem revitalized as well. And I think getting James Cook involved more in the passing game is opening this entire offense up. It was very predictable when it was just Stephon Diggs. Now they have, you got Kincaid, you got James Cook, like Shakir's playing well. This looks like a complete offense, and Josh Allen once again has the freedom to take off. It hit the end zone. Like I think he scored a running touchdown.
Yep.
And 5 out of his past 6. This is the best Josh Allen we've seen since Brian Daboll, in my opinion.
Yes, you're right. And you're right. The designed runs are there. I think that the goal, Anthony, I think organizationally, they decided we want to extend Josh Allen's career. Running him heavily is not going to do that. He will eventually wear down. But then their season went off the rails. And so it could be Joe Brady. It could also be, well, heck, we're done. If he doesn't put the offense on his back, we are done. Whatever it was, you're right, though. Josh Allen is back to being, now, it was only 10 for 32, but it didn't matter. It's when he's running, picking his spots, doing really well with that. Are the Chiefs making the playoffs?
The Chiefs?
I'm sorry, Bills. Are the Bills making the playoffs?
I think it's a long shot, but if they keep playing this type of football, they're gonna sneak in there. And if they sneak in there, they're gonna be a dangerous football team. No doubt.
Now, Kansas City. Patrick Mahomes all up in arms. Look, it was a penalty on Tony. He was off. It is what it is. We've seen the Chiefs get a lot of calls the last 2 weeks. The one on the pass interference on MVS, that was a bad non-call. But the Chiefs have had plenty over the time to balance the slate, so I don't feel bad for them. It is what it is. It was a beautiful play that would have potentially won the game for them. Kelsey just buying time running with the ball. It was so funny. And then he just, throws a perfect strike to Tony. Beautiful play. Counts for nothing. The Chiefs right now, they're tied with Jacksonville for the 3 seed, so 3 and 4. They're 1 game up on Denver right now. Could it get worse?
I didn't think it could get this bad for Kansas City. What I think the issue is, I think was it 34, 32 team drops up to this point. That's something I don't think Patrick Mahomes ever had to deal with before. And it started in week 1 with Kadarius Toney drops, and that almost set the tone. And then now recently it's been MVS. If you take away those drops, I think Kansas City wins 2 to 3 more games, and we're not having this conversation. Now, the offseason is going to be, the Chiefs need a big-time wide receiver. I don't think that's the issue. They didn't have a big-time wide receiver last year, and Mahomes almost had a career year, or possibly did have a career year statistically across the board and won a Super Bowl. What they need, I think Rashee Rice is the number 1 receiver. They need reliable complementary receivers, which they do not have in Kadarius Toney and MVS.
There's no doubt. Another thing that I don't think we talk about enough is, look, Travis Kelce's putting fantasy points up. He is nowhere in the stratosphere of the same player that he was. And last year, you're right, they won it without a great wide receiver. But Travis Kelce was playing at a legendary level. That fall off was apparent. Anything on Kelce?
Is it a fall off, or is it the knee injury just not healed, right? Because he missed the first game of the year, and you know how this is the NFL. He maybe a couple weeks off, he'd be fine now. But until he gets that time off to rest the knee, you can get back out there. You can take whatever the quarters or whatever type of injections and get on the football field, but you're not going to be the same. So Travis Kelce is aging, but is it a fall off, or is it just this knee injury lingering now into December?
Well, Anthony, I talk about this all the time. And in the offseason, I made a big point about Darren Waller. It's like, look, age equals slow recovery from injury. That is the biggest deal. You don't recover from injury the same way. And that's Darren Waller's deal the last 2 years. He had injuries that maybe earlier in his career, he could have come back in a few weeks. He was missing long periods of time. And look at him now. Hamstring, he had been iffy for weeks. And now, obviously, he's been out, 5 weeks or close to that. So incredible. But yes, you're right. Kelce's recovery from injury, he probably still is hurt. And at his age, and it's not getting better. And next year, we're looking at a 35-year-old player. Oh, man. I mean, Tony Gonzalez, those who remember him, he still put up fantasy points late into his career, but he was a completely different player. You lose your athleticism, and Kelce's made this shift years ago, and he's talked about it. Kelce's made public comments that he isn't the same player he was, but you can use savvy and you can use connection with your quarterback to still perform well. Final words of the Chiefs?
It's the Chiefs, and They get into the playoffs. What separates Kansas City from everybody else is playoff experience, Super Bowl experience, and that makes them a dangerous football team.
Can't have Anthony Cervino on a show and not talk about the Dallas Cowboys.
Wow.
They got their signature win. They hadn't had one. They beat the Seahawks, all right. They struggled with that, but the Seahawks are sub 500 now, I believe. They played the Eagles. They played them great in Philly. They smoked them in Dallas. Just go ahead.
I don't even know what to say. I wasn't expecting this because I'm a Cowboys fan. I'm a realist, and I know these are the games that Dallas loses. And I go back to last week against Seattle. They lose that game. They find ways to lose that game. And then this game in Philly, where you're saying it's a signature win. People are calling it a must win. It's a playoff scenario. All of those things the Cowboys fan tells me, okay, like let's expect let's lower the expectations and let's expect the worst. But like Dallas came out firing. And what I saw on that first drive, they were doing what the hell they wanted to do to Philly. They were running the football. They were throwing the football. Dak had time. Dak is mobile, which I think the mobile Dak is something that's been missing the past few seasons. But, Dallas had their way. I had concern earlier in the day about Micah Parsons saying with that illness, and they were showing him getting the oxygen in the sideline before the game. That guy's motor, I don't think he's human half the time. But like the way this Duran Bland got absolutely smoked last week. What they did, and they mentioned it, I think Collinsworth mentioned it, that at some point last week against Seattle, they put Stephon Gilmore a little bit undersized on DK Metcalf and kind of shut Metcalf down. And we saw that a little bit last night with Gilmore on A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown had a nice game, but he didn't look like his dominant self. So, like, whatever Dallas is doing right now, this is a dangerous football team. And I'm kind of happy as a Cowboys fan. I'm going to start raising my expectations for this team. They got a tough road ahead. You got Miami and Buffalo and Detroit, who I think Detroit's coming back down to reality. But if you can come out of this next two games against Miami and Buffalo, if you can split, then I think this Dallas Cowboys team, that they're going to make a run.
How important is it for Dallas to get the 1 seed over Philadelphia? Otherwise, you're playing other games on the road.
The 1 seed or the division or both?
Really, I should say the division gets them home games. The 1 seed gets them all home games. Now, I know the 49ers are ahead of them on that for tiebreaker. But how important is it for them to at least get the division and hopefully try to somehow pull out the 1 seed?
I can't remember the last time they lost at home. So, like, giving Dallas a home playoff game is huge. But I also think they can win on the road. My problem with Dallas is, can you beat the San Francisco 49ers? That's the team I'm worried about because we know Dak can go. They should have beaten Philly in Philly. Dak stepped out of bounds, and then the tight end caught the ball just outside. They won that football game. They were actually the better team statistically in Philly. So I think Dallas can win on the road. I don't know if they can beat San Francisco on the road. I don't even know if they can beat them at home. That's been their Achilles heel for like a couple of years now.
We've talked about Philly for weeks. We've talked about they're scoring points. They're winning. Very hard to argue with winning and scoring points. But we also said Brian Johnson, the offensive coordinator, a lot of inefficiencies from play to play and from drive to drive. And look, they had so much talent, they're able to score. Well, they weren't able to here. Yeah. And in the second half, it should have been desperation mode. They were running DeAndre Swift early in the second half like it was a close game or they were winning. You've got A.J. Brown. You've got Devontae Smith. You've got Dallas Goedert. You got Jalen Hurts. You're down significantly at the half. How do you not come out, pedal on the metal? If we lose, we lose. But if we're going to lose, we are going to be pushing the ball to see what we can get done here. Because running the ball with DeAndre Swift, 11 carries for 39 yards, that was not going to get them back in the game. Thoughts on the Eagles?
How much is Philly playing the way they did in the second half? Like you said, they should have been in desperation mode. They stuck to their game plan. How much of that is arrogance? Like, hey, it's Dallas. Look what Seattle did to them. We obviously lit them up at home a few weeks ago. A little bit of it felt like arrogance. Like, we're going to still do what we need to do. We don't have to be in desperation mode.
Yeah, and that's it. And Uncle Ted mentions hurt. Yeah, everybody's hurt. The whole league is hurt. Everybody in the NFL is hurt right now, unless somebody's back from injury and maybe they're young and they were recovered. Everybody's beat up. And yeah, he's beat up. But that said, he's out there. You got to throw the football. And we saw him against Buffalo. He was hurt against Buffalo, and he was certainly able to move the ball down the field against them. And I know Dallas is a better defense than Buffalo, but again, you empty the cartridge. You go out and get after him. So anyway, the Eagles are still fine. Right now, they would lose the number 1 seed to the 49ers. Eagles have an easier schedule down the stretch. The schedule lightened significantly for them. So they have a chance to, keep moving forward. But the 49ers, they get that game against Baltimore. That's the one. But right now, honestly, I'd imagine the 49ers had little issue with them. We'll talk about that game in a minute. We'll move that in a minute. But so I know you're a Cowboys guy, and I know that we think very highly of them right now. How do the Eagles finish? Do they finish the 1 seed, or do they win their division, or are they a wild card?
They control their own destiny, like with the division. And if you look at the schedule, at Seattle, home against New York, home against Arizona, then at the Giants. In theory, they should go 4-0, but the way we've seen this Philly team play, I think there's a realistic chance they can go 2-2, and people think, hey, that's crazy. They've lost 2 games in a row. Their offense doesn't look good. Call it what you will. Seattle played well against Dallas, and Seattle, it was Drew Lock. They held their own against the 49ers.
Absolutely.
And then you got to go to Seattle. And that's a different ball game. And then the other game that I think they could potentially lose, Arizona has come up and bit people in the ass this year. And it's a Jonathan Gannon revenge game.
Oh, I love it, love it.
Gannon going to Philly, he knows how to prepare to play in that stadium. He knows, and again, Kyler, I feel like Arizona, they beat a couple of good, they beat Dallas, they're gritty. They play for Gannon, and I think that could be the other game.
I love that. You take a team lightly in the NFL, and I'll very quickly get off point. Mike Tomlin, last week, they lose to Arizona, and I was worried about that game. Tomlin has a history of choking against lesser competition. I was stunned when they came back 4 days later and laid an egg against the Patriots. That one I didn't see coming. You figured, all right, we just got stung. Don't let it happen again. I don't want to see Pittsburgh in the playoffs. No offense if you're a Pittsburgh fan. I don't want to see Kenny Pickett or Mitch Trubisky in the playoffs because to me that's a waste of 3 hours. There's 11 or 13 postseason games. I don't want them in one. Quick words on Steelers, very quick, and then we'll move on.
They fight. Everybody blame Matt Canada. I get that they had the backup quarterback Mitch Trubisky in and all the giveaways. Steelers could have won that game. At what point do we blame Mike Tomlin? Mike Tomlin, instead of taking the 3 points, he went for it. They missed it. Then they scored. That was at least going to overtime without that decision. And with the way that offense is, they had no business going for it.
No, zero.
At some point, we got to blame Mike Tomlin. He hasn't won in a long time.
You're right. You're nothing significant. No significant wins, right? That's very accurate. Now, the Ravens beat the Rams in a thriller. Look, we'll start with the Rams. They lost. They lose a punt return in overtime. Now, I've said this for many years. If an offense is playing well, I don't care how good your defense is mostly irrelevant. Sean McVay, he continues to crush in the game plans every week. Now, I get it. The Ravens lost Kyle Hamilton. He got knocked out, then he came back in, then he was done for the day. That was a huge loss for them. He is like a queen on a chessboard. You can move him. You can put him on anybody. He can take a receiver. He can take a tight end. He is a dynamic piece. But all that said, the Rams, now I'll give the Ravens defense a little credit. In the second half, they played a little better because they gave 20 points in the first half, safety, and it was part of the second half scoring as well. But they did slow down. But Matthew Stafford shreds this defense for 294 and 3, and there's an overtime involved too. He got some yardage in overtime. We'll give him that as well. But all that said, Cooper Kupp, 115 yards and a touchdown. Demarcus Robinson gets a touchdown. Puka gets 84 yards. Kyron Williams, not the great game he's used to. 25 for $114. This defense was equipped to deal with that duo downhill running scheme. they still got it done. So let's go with the Rams first. Is this a playoff team?
They're certainly playing like it. I worry about them defensively, but it's hard to count out Sean McVay. With the way he schemes things up, like he almost reminds me of like a Shanahan or a Mike McDaniel. I like McVay a lot. He's won a Super Bowl. He's been to a couple, and he's getting it done. And this is a Rams team that a lot of us counted out in the preseason, including myself. And he has them afloat. They're right on the bubble. They're the 8 seed right now. If the season ends today, they almost beat Baltimore, who's a number 1 seed in the AFC. So, yeah, I'm not counting the Rams out. Look what it's ahead of them. Green Bay, Minnesota at the 6 and 7 seeds right now. You can make a case that the Rams sneak into the playoffs.
And the Rams not only played on the road, it was a game in the elements. And that says a lot for the LA team coming out into that environment and playing that well. And again, taking them to overtime. They were right there. The Ravens. So, look, I'll start with this. I get a ton wrong like everybody else. I was on Odell Beckham because Beckham, we've seen an increase in targets. We saw this is a defense, the Rams, that you can attack downfield. I go, he's got 1 or 2 downfield shots in him. He did. And he was underthrown on both of them. But regardless, he goes for 97 and a touchdown. So Odell Beckham really could be that player. Obviously, he's rostered in the majority of competitive leagues, but he's a player you may want to move into that circle of trust and start him. He's been healthy for a little while, and that's good. But Lamar Jackson is the story. Lamar Jackson put the team on his shoulders. They didn't have much success on the ground. And look, the Rams, they're very good against the run. They're not like lights out, but they're very good. But you can totally get them in the air. Lamar goes over 300 yards. Lamar runs for 70. He throws 3 touchdowns. Lamar showed us what we already know. He is a great quarterback. What'd you think of the Rams? The Ravens. I'm sorry.
Listen, the Ravens are playing good football. I think we overvalue the defense a little bit, but there's been quite a few games this year, if you go back, where they've looked vulnerable. Like, how do you give up 33 points to the Browns? They've given up 24 to the Cardinals. So, the defense is really, really good. A couple weeks ago, people were talking about it like a historic, like it was like the 2000 Ravens. I don't think it's close. And they've been a little bit vulnerable lately. So right now, they're the best team in the AFC. The test for them is how they look against San Francisco. I think that'll tell us who this Ravens are. But I love the way offensively this team is playing football. Lamar Jackson is playing the best football as a thrower of his career. That's the difference.
Yes, absolutely. And so how far can Lamar take this team? The AFC is wide open. Can he take them to the promised land?
Of course, because, if you look at the competition, like obviously Mahomes, but the AFC quarterbacks right now, if you look, you got Lamar, Tua, no playoff experience. Obviously, Mahomes in the 3 seed, Trevor Lawrence, a little bit banged up. Joe Flacco, well, actually kind of like Joe Flacco this year. And then the Steelers coach, there's a world we live in where we're going to get 4 backup quarterbacks in the playoffs in the AFC. That's realistic.
The number of backups and bad quarterbacks, it seems, we're in the moment. It seems greater than ever. It seems almost every game that we're watching has a quarterback that doesn't belong on the field. Justin Herbert gets knocked out. We see Easton Stick. He's probably going to be playing for a while. Add another one to the list. Is it me, or does this seem like a new high of many backup quarterbacks playing a lot of weeks in a row?
I don't know if I've ever seen anything this bad in terms of starting quarterback injuries.
Right.
Maybe we have to go back and look at the numbers through the years, but I don't think we've ever seen this many. And it starts earlier and earlier every year.
Right. And in the past years, because they'll cite the same amount of quarterbacks have started, like 50-something quarterbacks. Yes, but a lot of those quarterbacks played 1 game or they played 2 games. And all of a sudden now, though, it's like Aiden O'Connell's going to play the whole season. Jake Browning's going to play half a season. We are going to see a lot of these quarterbacks playing a lot of football. Joe Flacco is probably going to have an 8-game run as a starting quarterback, 7 or 8, whatever that's going to be, 7-8 game run. He's going to be the quarterback the rest of the way, they said. You got probably time for one more, Anthony, because we got a meeting in a little bit.
Yeah.
The Bengals, they ride Jake Browning to another win. Indianapolis, not a bad matchup. I mean, certainly Indianapolis is kind of a paper tiger. They're not a great team. Throws an interception. It's not his fault. Like Tanner Hudson literally had the ball in his hand and handed it to the defender, runs it in for a pick six. I can't fault Browning on that one. Joe Mixon continues to compile. Can't get you 4 yards of carry, but he's good as a receiver. Keeps finding the end zone. Chase Brown, 2 weeks in a row, 9 and 11 touches. A nice screen pass for him. This is a guy I was on in the preseason, Anthony, when Mixon had those legal troubles.
Yeah.
I was drafting Chase Brown at best ball leagues. The ones that survived are benefiting from that now. Yep. But I was on Chase Brown heavy out of Illinois. Just thought he would be a good receiver, and I thought he was shifty enough as a runner that I thought he could get things done. Now his yards per carry, limited sample size, a few carries. But what are we getting now? Oh, one more thing, and Jamar Chase. We had the great week last week, 3 for 29 on 4 targets. They were able to run. They played with a lead, and I think that when they have a lead, which may not be a frequent occurrence, they're not going to make Browning throw more than the 24 times he did. And he had a cramp in his hand at one point. He left for a drive or something. But all that said, what are you thinking of the Bengals?
Number one, Chase Brown, like we're starting to see the end of Joe Mixon. I think this is an audition for Chase Brown, and he's probably going to be the RB1 there moving forward because the Bengals have a lot of people to pay. And, you now have a rookie running back on a rookie deal moving forward. And I like Chase Brown as well. What I see from this Bengals team, they're adjusting, right? I think they're going to lean on Mixon and Chase Brown and try to get this team to the playoffs. The AFC right now, they have 6 teams that are 7-6. Yes. So talk about wide open. Cincinnati, like the 2 most battle-tested ones. You got Cincinnati and Buffalo. Should we count out the Broncos? Maybe they're not battle-tested, but Sean Payton's certainly battle-tested. So, this thing's wide open. The Colts are a good football team. All things considered, what they've dealt with, they've been the team I feel like they've had the backup quarterback the longest. Yes. And Gardner, and they're playing really good football. So that was a quality win for the Bengals. They've won now 2 games in a row, and they have enough talent on both sides of the ball, and they have enough experience from the past 2 years to get in. They're not dangerous. I don't think they make a run, but they'll make a little bit of noise.
Wow. I'm going to cut you out because I know you got a meeting. So, Anthony, everybody else who's here, I'm going to continue the show, but I want to give Anthony the proper send-off. Anthony, tell everybody where they can find you and your work.
My day job here at RotoWire, the gambling group, and, of course, all my written content, my rankings, and all which mostly is all audio and video podcasts over at fffaceoff.com. Yeah, make sure you're following Anthony at The Real NFL Guru. Anthony, always appreciate you. Absolutely, I'll finish out the show, and I'll see you next week. See you later.
All right, bye. All right, so quickly, the Lions fall to 9-4. It's not looking good right now. They're going through a spell, right? And teams do that. They're a good football team. But here is the narrative. And we talked about this. Those who are on the start-sit stream and asked me Jared Goff questions. I go, there's a long-standing narrative is that Jared Goff, under 40 degrees and on the road, struggles. Is it fallacy? Well, it hit again. 20 for 35, 161 yards, a touchdown, and 2 picks. There we have it. And the Bears have been playing better on defense. I want to give the Bears some props. The Bears defense has been bringing it. Lee Mixon's not out. If Anthony was talking about, we're talking about the future for Mixon, that he's coming to the end of his time with them. And I don't know what his contract status. I know he took a pay cut this year. My guess is they probably could move on from him next year. And they may well, but that's not this year. But anyway, with the Lions, they got smoked by the Bears. They got a quick lead before halftime, and they were done. We didn't hear from them offensively. The Bears defense is playing well. It was almost like when they brought in Montez Sweat, it was a shot in the arm. It was like, it gave them some renewed energy. That made Yannick Ngakoue a better pass rusher because as a number 2, Ngakoue's fine. As a number 1, you could deal with him and he's not a problem. So Ngakoue's played better. The linebackers are playing faster. The secondary is growing up. And but the Lions had very few answers. And all that said, Jahmyr Gibbs, we said he might have a big play, and he did. He had a big rushing attempt in this game. He gets to 82 yards and a touchdown, so fine enough. David Montgomery, again, a floor game, doesn't find the end zone. quickly touching on Bears, Uncle Ted pointed out DJ Moore. Yeah, we're on DJ Moore all preseason. Like this guy, he should be he should finish the season with 1,400 yards. He should get a 1,400-yard season, and now it's probably 10 touchdowns. He'll probably end up the season with 10 touchdowns. That's a rushing touchdown in there too. He had. So DJ Moore has always been a superstar. He's in horrible circumstances, and now Fields by far was the best quarterback he's had, and they will get him the ball. He will continue to see the ball, and I'm just so excited for DJ Moore because he has been. Just again, he could have had a major career to this point if he had fallen into a better circumstance. And it's always good to see it now, but it's sad to see what his career could have been like had it worked out. Let's talk about what I want to do the first one, but Anthony came in early today, which I was glad he was here. The players who were week winners. We earlier did talk about Lamar Jackson, but if you needed him, there were people who had start, sit, stream questions about him. And they were like, it's going to be weather, Lamar and the weather. Lamar had an illness on Thursday or Friday. Most of the time, I'm like, look, play Lamar here. Lamar will get it done. The Rams are not a good pass defense, but Lamar catches if you use them, helps you get your fantasy football playoff spot solidified. Debo. On one of the shows, I told people that Shanahan will set it up. He knows you either going to target somebody on Bobby Wagner, or you're going to target somebody on Jamal Adams. And sure enough, Debo's long touchdown. Who's trailing him by 5 yards? Jamal Adams. Debo was the player they were going to put on him because both of those players, whether it be Wagner, who it wasn't, or Adams, those are middle of the field players. And Debo often operates there. And I was glad to see it. That Shanahan was always going to figure that out, and especially this is a team they faced already, so he knew firsthand. Evan Ingram. Now this is a tough one. Look, we didn't think Trevor Lawrence would be able to walk. I don't know what the deal here is. That injury was nowhere near as severe as they made it out to be, because he was running. He was legit running, and he didn't like when Mahomes was hurt last year. You could tell the dude was very, very hurt. He was hopping on the foot. Trevor Lawrence did not look that way. Well, Evan Ingram is facing Cleveland, who was like lights out against tight ends. They were like the best unit against tight ends. It starts at questions. It could have been a recommendation to start Ingram over a decent option. If you didn't, good thing, because he was a week winner. 11 catches, 95 yards, and 2 touchdowns. They line him up on the outside. That's how he got one of his touchdowns. They moved him around. But you see, Evan Ingram, and we know this, he's a wide receiver. He plays tight end. And the other problem was Denzel Ward was expected to play. And I'm doing a live stream, and I didn't realize they deactivated him. He had practiced. We thought Denzel Ward was coming back. That threw the whole coverage plan. They play man 45% of the time. Them, the Cowboys, the Patriots, league high. Not having him, everybody shifted around. Evan Ingram ended up doing great. We already said Matthew Stafford a couple. We talked about the Rams game. Both, again, not crazy great games, but definitely, big winner type performances. Drake London. He was a prop we pushed this week. At home, he has been he's been great at home. Usually at least 75-yard team. His prop was like 45 yards. 10 for $172 and 11 targets. And Desmond Ridder should be in that line of week winners if you're in a super flex. If you had to play him, playing Ridder at home has cashed more than not. At home, much, much better. London facing a bad Tampa secondary. No Jamel Dean. Carlton Davis has struggled. There was a nice long pass at the end of the clock ran out. Probably another 40-ish yards tacked on there. Great game there. Breece Hall. Start sit questions. I had to tell people when they had other options, it's very hard to trust Breece Hall. And with Zach Wilson coming back in, the expectation was the offense would be more disheartened than ever after all the garbage he's put them through. Well, Breece Hall is a receiver, 8 for 86 and a touchdown, chips in 40 on the ground, ends up with a great day. And then David Njoku with 2 touchdowns at last. And here is another problem. Last week, Joe Flacco leans on Harrison Bryant, who had more than 2 or so targets in a game. Last week, 5 targets. Bryant gets a touchdown. Oh, man, Flacco's a Harrison Bryant guy. Well, guess he wasn't. Njoku, 91 yards and 2 touchdowns. Hopefully you played him. Again, another week winner type. And then, look, we talk about DJ Moore. A rushing touchdown, a receiving touchdown, 98 scrimmage yards. And there we have it. And then the Dream Crushers. Stephon Diggs, 4 for 24. He hasn't had 100 yards. I mentioned this earlier in the show since week 6. Whatever's going on there, it's a major problem. He had 74 yards in his last game. That was like a high water mark since over the last 5 weeks or so. Diggs is not playing well right now. I don't know how you view him as more than a wide receiver 3 with pray for upside, but it hasn't been there. Jamar Chase, we said when we covered the Bengals, 3 for 29. They didn't have to throw, so Chase didn't get hammered with targets. Angelo, I would say that Diggs got shut down. Diggs has not played well in 7 weeks. So call it what you will. You could shut down a receiver who's not playing well if the receiver's not playing well. See what I'm saying? So, yes, if a player is playing great and you shut him down. Now, Diggs came out 300-yard games and Snead shuts him down. All right, Snead, perhaps. They're not taking anything from Snead. L'Jarius Snead's a great corner. But Stephon Diggs has been horrible. He has been horrible since week 6. And so easy to shut down when a player's not playing well, right? But he's not getting – whatever it is right now, Stephon Diggs has been complaining since the offseason. And he always comes across a guy, if he's not happy, it reflects in his play. Nobody, if Stephon Diggs is playing his game, nobody can shut him down. He could, like I say, de-pants anybody who's defending him if he's playing his game. He's not. Diggs does not look good right now. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 3 for 21 on 9 targets against the Bears. We chalked it up to Jared Goff outside in sub 40-degree temperatures. Justin Jefferson, big kick in the shorts there. Chest injury, comes back, finally makes his way on the field, 2 for 27 on 3 targets, takes a huge shot in the back, done for the day. A lot of people just couldn't wait for him to get back in the field, and now we have that. So not sure what his status is going forward. Mike Evans almost had a touchdown. His hand touched the sideline as he was getting his second foot down. It was like a nanosecond. They tried to challenge because it was ruled incomplete. They challenged it. It was literally a nanosecond. Mike Evans at least could have gotten you a touchdown, 1 for 8. They, as expected, we said Chris Godwin would be the squeaky wheel. He got a ton of targets, but did okay with them. Nothing great. But Mike Evans only had 6 targets for him. That's a low total. Nico Collins played a few snaps, 3 or 5 snaps. Done. Calf injury. So there's that. And it was a tough matchup. But remember, Nico Collins gets in the slot a lot. Houston moves those receivers all around. So it's not like Collins wouldn't have avoided Sauce Gardner, DJ Reed enough. But the injury, and now hopefully he can play next week, but that's a problem. And then, of course, pair him up with C.J. Stroud, who played poorly, but he had no Collins. He had no Dell. He had no Schultz. Noah Brown turned back into a pumpkin. He had a pair of, 140-plus yard games. And then around the injury, he had a pair of goose eggs. So there you have it with Noah Brown. Talk about Gabe Davis' boom or bust. With his Noah Brown, bigger boom bust. And so now let's get to the Monday night previews. 2 games tonight. They're running concurrently. So you'll have to get a couple of devices going here. ESPN, ESPN Plus, whatever it is. You got to catch both games here. I'm not sure if the network's going to do something on one channel where you can see them both at the same time. I don't know how that'll work. But again, so Titans, Dolphins. Line is at 13.5. It went down to 13. Today it's at 14. 14 is a real, that's that break point number, right? 2 full touchdowns. Miami consistently crushes opponents who are weak on their home field. It's been a very consistent drumbeat. They've done it throughout. The Titans, the biggest injury is Jeffrey Simmons being out. Jeffrey Simmons, defensive end. Their best run stopper is T.R. Tart, but Jeffrey Simmons is like a slight bit behind him. But the disruption and the attention that Jeffrey Simmons requires, that is going to make life a whole lot easier on the Dolphins offense. Tua throws quickly anyway, but they could actually let a couple more routes develop because without Simmons, even a beat-up offensive line in Miami should be fine at home. And remember, Tennessee has all season, if they are not in their home stadium, they just have not shown up consistently. Now, in this game, this Miami defense, and I've said this for weeks, Vic Fangio's defenses, it takes time to improve over the course of the season. The communications, the pass-offs between players within the zone, it takes time. It's been getting better and better. Now, we know they lost Jalen Phillips to an Achilles. Great pass rusher. But this defense is loaded. They've been great against the run. They've been great against the pass. They're getting pressure. This is a phenomenal set. Now, what they will give you. They'll give you the middle of the field. So Chiggy Okonkwo, nice on his prop bet, betting over like 32 yards. He's been having good yardage holds for 3 or 4 weeks with Will Levis, but he'll continue to see targets. They'll give you that. DeAndre Hopkins should be okay here because, again, they give you the underneath stuff. So Hopkins should pile up some catches. Now, let's put it this way, though. If they get a little frisky and they decide, you know what, let's say Jalen Ramsey talks Fangio into saying, let me just make my side of the zone wherever DeAndre Hopkins is. That may not end well for Hopkins because his quarterback isn't winning him any awards. Dobbs was benched. That probably sticks. So anyway, the other player I like for the Titans in this game, Tyjae Spears. I do expect the Dolphins get out to a big lead as they always do. They haven't taken opponents lightly at home. And if that happens, Derrick Henry gets game scripted out. And we've seen it. That's the way they play. The hurry up, catch up back is Tyjae Spears. So I'm betting the under on Derrick Henry's rushing yards because I think they fall behind so fast, he's relegated. And we see him. We could see him with 37% of the snaps here. That could happen. And Tyjae Spears could get 7 targets in this game. So I think Tyjae Spears is a nice PPR play. I do think that, again, I think Chiggy Okonkwo is working it. And again, with Hopkins, he should get catches, but be careful with the Jalen Ramsey angle. I wouldn't make a prop bet on Hopkins because the Jalen Ramsey angle could be a little bit scary. Because Hopkins at this stage of his career, the one thing you could beat Ramsey consistently is you could beat him deep. And I know Hopkins has gotten downfield deep, but obviously he's not the speed guy. So there's that. Overall, Will Levis is probably going to have a problem here. The Vic Fangio defenses do a lot post-snap. That confuses younger quarterbacks. And so that's going to be a problem for Levis. So I am not optimistic about the Titans offense. They might get some garbage time late. The Dolphins on offense, look, I said Jeffrey Simmons is out. That is the big linchpin. I don't see any scenario that the Titans can't cover. They're decent against the run. But when we're talking about the run, we're talking about the speed of Achane. We're talking about the speed of Mostert. This isn't a typical rushing attack. So, and with Simmons out, that really knocks that run. So Miami should be able to move the ball however they want, whenever they want. That should be the mode of operation. I do Tyreek Hill. I'm betting the over. The prop on some plays up to 104 yards. Not really worried about it. I mean, Tyreek Hill's playing 60% of the snaps. Doesn't matter. Tua is throwing the ball before Hill gets to the defender, knowing Hill's going to blow by him and just catch the ball. And it's happening. And the long plays are there whenever they want them. And I imagine they do this on a national stage. Achane, of course, you're firing him up. And he had more carries than Mostert last week. He's like 17 to 11. And I do think, look, they've shown to give him that workload. Achane's going to get work. And Mostert's going to get enough work. This Miami could score 40 again. You never know, but they probably could score 40 here. So overall in this game, the best bet, I think, is Miami over their team total. I believe it's 29.5 over the team total. They should sail over 30 here. There's nothing in the peripheral to tell me it's going to happen otherwise. Other Monday night game, the Packers at the Giants. This line was 6.5 all week. It's down to 6. Look, in terms of winning the game, Packers should be able to sneak it out. They should be able to sneak it out. But the Giants, I expect them to cover, and they have a decent shot of pulling the upset. Why? This is X's nose. There's that subliminal game I talk about, right? The subliminal game is this. The Packers are coming off a real nice run, and they beat the Chiefs. We see it all the time, the letdown game. All week, your coaches are telling you the Giants are dangerous. The Giants are dangerous. But you know who you're playing. And in the back of your mind, where you don't make decisions and your mind kind of just knows what's going on, it's hard to take the Giants seriously. And the Giants, they may be a bad team. They are very well coached by Brian Daboll. Extremely well coached. And they play hard. The Giants are going to give them a game here. I definitely am taking the 6 points. If you feel real frisky, taking the money line at bigger odds, but the 6 points is much safer. Now, how do the Packers move the ball? Christian Watson's out. Aaron Jones looks like he's going to play. That makes him tough. If you've held on to him for fantasy, it's a Monday night game. If you had somebody to pivot off to and you're still – they haven't used him great, but he's Aaron Jones. And the matchup is good. Giants are bottom 10 in run defense. As to how much work he gets, your guess is as good as mine. But if you've held Aaron Jones, and I know it's Monday and most of your players played already, there's a league where I need him. And I have him in my starting lineup. And if they deactivate him, I have him in a flex spot. So I got Daniel Bellinger, who also is questionable, but I think an illness on his end. And so I would just flex in Bellinger. You'd hate to flex in Mac Breida, but but anyway, it is what it is. If you got to flip somebody for 2 points, but and then of course if Jones plays, then Dillon gets a little less work. So that kind of would minimize them both. But if the Packers get anything going, if they could get the ground game going and do well, that's their ticket. That's the scenario where they win this game without a problem, if they get that going. In terms of the passing game, Christian Watson's absence, he was clicking. The last 3 weeks, he was really clicking. But, and I saw somebody in the chat mention, I'm sorry I didn't, Angelo mentioned Wicks. Dontavian Wicks is like 40 yards in every game he plays. And he plays about 37 to 40% of the snaps. Dontavian Wicks is going to have a full role in this game, I would think, without Christian Watson. Dontavian Wicks is a real nice over bet on a prop. Whatever his yards, if his yards are anywhere near 40, betting the over on those are good. He hits every week, and now he'll have more snaps. And if you need him, again, we're Monday, your lineup this is probably set. But if you need him, yeah, I think you can flex him. And, of course, Romeo Doubs, Jaden Reed, they're going to get their work. And it's a good matchup for them. It's a very good match. The Giants are being good in coverage, but Matt LaFleur does an excellent job of scheming those receivers into space. Jaden Reed will also get work in the run game, a little bit of, Jones is out. Okay, thank you for adding that, Lee. Well, that's good to know. And there's that. All right, so no Aaron Jones. So now, that puts A.J. Dillon in a much better spot against this run defense. That is the way you want to. And the Giants have been, like I said, they've been decent in coverage. LaFleur schemes the passing game well, so they should be okay. Giants' pressure has been getting better. They've been getting a little bit better, but they're sporadic. And so all that said, you start Dobbs as you normally would. You hope he gets the touchdown. Jaden Reed is exciting here because the way they utilize him, and again, those schemed run plays, Jaden Reed has a little more upside than usual. So I think we're fine with that. And again, I like Wicks as a flex because I think he gets something done. Now with Aaron Jones out, I think that we definitely are going to be excited about A.J. Dillon putting up some numbers again. So there's that. Giants side of the ball, we never are sure we're getting Saquon Barkley, because the limiting situation around him. It's not his fault. He's a superstar. Sometimes the situation limits him. But I think at home in this game, coming off the bye, a little bit fresher, they're going to ride him. And it's a good situation for him. The Packers are better in run defense than they were in past years, but they're still middle of the road. And so, and they're also middling against receiving backs. So I think overall, Barkley gets you your, solid yardage, good chance to score. Barkley's in a good spot here. And obviously he's game script proof because you fall behind, use him more as a receiver. So very good opportunity for him. Giants, obviously the pass protection's a problem. And if they fall behind, it's a real problem because Rashawn Gary has been rushing at an elite level and helping his teammates, opening them up by the attention he requires. So if the Giants fall behind, this becomes problematic because that pass rush is real. So there's that. I don't recommend banking on any one Giants receiver. DeVito's had some production. It's just like, is Wanda going to get some? Is Jalen Hyatt going to get some? It's just too hard to guess from game to game if anybody's going to do anything and which one, if somebody's going to pop, which it is. There's no rhyme or reason to it. And so, again, if you have to play him, I get it. And hopefully it's the player that hits with something, but I wouldn't be too optimistic. It's going to have to be a Barkley game for them. And I think Barkley could carry them and keep it close. That said, everybody, I hope that if you have fantasy plays left, if you have betting left, good luck with all that. Be back on Tuesday with Brandon Kravitz. Thank you for joining me. Have a wonderful rest of your day.